this session properly now, and welcome to everyone joining this webinar, Winning with Discount. I'm Dave Gordon. I'm a Research Director here based in London at Edge by Ascential. Regular webinar viewers might recognize a slight change in color and branding here, Edge by Ascential in the bottom left-hand corner. Let me just briefly give you a little bit of reasoning behind that. Planet Retail, RNG, as you might have viewed our webinars in the past, is part of Ascential Group, and Ascential has been building a portfolio of retail and digital insight brands in recent years. So Planet Retail and RNG coming together in 2015, joined by One Click Retail in 2016, Clavis Insight in 2017, and BrandView in 2018. So that's the journey that we've been on as a group, and all those brands have now come together as one business, and that business is Edge by Ascential, and we're a combined data insight and advisory solution leading in e-commerce analysis. So we now have Edge Market Share, which was formerly powered by One Click Retail, Edge Digital Shelf, driven by Clavis Insight, Edge Price and Promotions, driven by BrandView, and of course Edge Retail Insight, which is formerly Planet Retail RNG. I'm very much part of Edge Retail Insight, and that's where this webinar is coming from today. But just so that you're all aware, future sort of communications will all be around our Edge positioning, and I hope that's given a little bit of clarity and insight as to where we have been and where we're heading to. But back to today, and let's have a look at the agenda. I think it's a good time to be involved in discount, or to be looking at discount retail. It's a growth channel for sure. There's plenty of developments going on within it. And if you're a brand, if you're a supplier looking at this market, then I think increasingly there's more ways to win in this channel. So I want to build a picture over the next 25 minutes that gives you maybe some of the tools and some of the knowledge to help you succeed in this particular channel. So we'll look at discount in context and just understanding the performance and the size of the opportunity that the discount market, the discount channel offers. We'll then look at that changing landscape and how discounters are developing in a way that's going to keep them relevant and in place for years to come. And then thirdly, we'll think about how brands can win with discount, how they can align strategies and their agenda to that discount channel. I'll round up at the end, and we may have an opportunity for a little bit of Q&A, so do send your questions in on the portal. Let's start with discount in context and understand the performance of the discount channel and the opportunity. This is a data chart driven by the Edge Retail Insight database, and it pulls together all our information from our tracking of over 2,000 retailers, well over 10,000 banners. We aggregate it all together, and we've pulled the data here by channel. I think the first thing to say here is that retailers fall within the discount channel if they are typically limited assortment retailers, typically offering a high proportion of private label, underpinned, of course, by a value proposition and low-cost operations. So that's typically how we would define those operating in the discount channel, and that's how we aggregate them into this particular definition. But I think you can see from this chart, not the biggest channel, of course, because supermarkets and hyperstores are by far bigger than the discount channel. But in terms of growth, in terms of opportunity, in terms of that potential, then the discount channel, the compound annual growth rate that we're projecting for the next 5 years through to 2023 is quite attractive, 6%. And that is clearly more significant than, say, the supermarket channel or the hyperstores channel. I mean, broadly, typically, smaller stores are going to be better served, I think, by growth prospects in the years ahead, as clearly consumers are changing their shopping behaviors, shopping a little more often, a little more frequently, and perhaps smaller basket sizes in that respect. So proximity store-based outlets are going to do generally better in the years ahead in terms of growth potential than those larger format stores. And discount, I think, will certainly gain some benefit from that, as you can see from that growth rate. If we take a look at what's behind those figures, then the chart on the left shows the leading 5 operators in the discount channel, and by far Aldi and Lidl are driving the strongest growth in the marketplace. They are outstripping the nearest discount channel competitor almost sort of 4 times there. So Aldi and Lidl, recognized here as Schwarz Group, we will touch on in the next slide. But just to say that in the top 5, you've also got the mass merchandise US-based retailers of Dollar General and Dollar Tree, very significant in the US market. And then Edeka in 5th place, German-based operator, really heading up a long tail of discount and variety store operators across Europe and beyond. The chart on the right-hand side really just shows that Europe is very much the home of the discount channel, a significant size in terms of its revenues there. And it really has been, I guess, the home of discount since the 1960s, with Germany and Central Europe building a very much a strong penetration of discount retailers that we'll see in a couple of slides' time. But I think it's fair to say, when you look at the other regions in that chart on the right-hand side, that North America, Latin, they're all starting to build traction in terms of the discount channel. And I think that bodes well for the future in terms of opportunities for brands and suppliers. But I said we'd have a closer look at Aldi and Lidl. They're the ones that tend to grab the headlines because they're by far the biggest operators in the channel. Certainly when brands, suppliers are looking at working with the discount channel, they look at the opportunities with these 2 retailers in mind. And I think Lidl has clearly grabbed a lot of headlines most recently. Its well-publicized entrance into the US market last year really put Lidl sort of front and center in terms of publicity. And whilst that has not perhaps gone off to the greatest of starts, it takes clearly an operator some time to adapt and develop its proposition for each local market. Lidl has done an incredible job really across Europe in terms of disrupting the marketplace in Europe, expanding rapidly, opening stores aggressively, developing its store network to well over 10,000 stores across almost 28 markets in Europe. So they've done a great job in Europe, but largely their sales are still driven from that one region. Whereas I think Aldi deserves quite a lot of credit. And by Aldi, I'm talking about both Aldi Nord and Aldi Sud. They operate in discrete regions around Europe and more globally. But Aldi as an entity really deserves some credit for the way in which they have gone about building a global business. Europe is clearly very significant for Aldi in terms of the sort of middle blue-grey bar there. But look at the way in which Aldi Sud has developed its business in the US in terms of the top red bar there. Really growing quite significantly from a slow start in the 1970s. In the last decade, it's really pushed on very quickly there and is now pushing on through 2,000 stores in the US. And that's really made a big difference to the overall aggregated revenues there. And also on the other side of the globe, pushing very successfully into Australia, disrupting the status quo that was the Australian grocery market, and again, building a sizable business in that particular region. And of course, I'll go on to mention it later, but starting to dip a toe in the water in terms of China as well. So, Aldi, I think, deserves a lot of credit for what it's achieved in recent years, and that ethos that has served it so well, value, simplicity, aggressive scale, has really helped it get to this position to be the channel's leading discount retailer. Now, I mentioned earlier that Europe was by far the biggest market for discount retail. And so you might think, well, is there still an opportunity in Europe? And I think this chart here is an interesting way to look at it. On the scale here is a percentage of the food retail market, and it's looking at the proportion of discount channel sales as a percentage of the overall food retail market in every country in Europe. And you can see there's a huge variety there. in terms of Germany, very heavily penetrated in terms of discount retail, over 40%. And then, other markets pretty strong in terms of Austria, Poland, both over 30%. But I think the point I'd make here is that there are many European markets, major European economies, where actually the discount share is still relatively low, and actually below, let's say, a Western European average of 18%. And I think that just shows the potential, really, of the discount channel still has in a developed economy such as Europe, with markets like the UK at, say, only just under 15% discount penetration, Spain, Italy, France at 10% or under. And I think that just highlights, as I say, the potential. So if I look at our database in a little more detail, and I've just had a quick look across some markets, just pulled out some markets that I think you'd find of interest in terms of potential, looking at both sales added in terms of physical euros that will be generated over the next 5 years, and as well as the compound annual growth rates. I should note that I've left Germany off this. The German discount market is so big that even a small sort of growth rate generates sales added of quite some number. I think on the note there, a small compound annual growth rate of just under 2% will generate almost 9 billion euros of added sales over 5 years. So putting the favorite to one side, so ignoring Germany as that largest market, I think these are the markets that brands and suppliers should be quite interested in. Italy, looking from right to left, is of interest because Aldi has just moved into that market this year. So that's going to drive the discount channel in Italy. Poland is quite a unique market. They have a market leader in Poland, Biedronka, which is a discount retailer, actually leading the market, which is quite unusual. So the population as a whole are more predisposed to the discount channel, and good growth is forecast there. France, just a huge market anyway, so a small amount of growth there will generate a reasonable sales return. And Lidl is still pushing hard in France, looking to add another 300 stores or so over the next 3 or 4 years. But I think the real interesting story, the one to pull out, is the United Kingdom. And it has been a decade of discount for the UK. There's plenty more where that's to come from. Our projections based on our database are showing an extra 12 billion euros worth of sales to be added, and that's driven by the likes of Aldi and Lidl. Aldi seeking 1,200 stores by 2025, Lidl 1,000 stores by 2023. Even the market leader in the UK has felt the need to develop its own discount format, and that was launched just a few months ago, called Jax. Again, further details are on our portal for insight into that format. And then variety discounters as well are an important part of the market, with, and not just in the UK, but more generally, but with operators such as B&M adding 600 stores already, adding 40 to 50 stores per annum. So there's plenty to go at in markets like the UK, but also further afield as well. And I think that's why the discount channel should be of interest to brands and suppliers alike. So having given a little bit of context, looked at the size of the opportunity, looked at the potential there, let's think a little bit about the changing landscape and about how developments are shaping up within the discount channel. And I want to do this by looking at what we call our sort of winning strategies. I think we recognize that the landscape is changing. There are lots of things, whether it's consumer expectations, whether it's a fragmentation of supply chains, whether it's just intense competition intensifying. But there are lots of developments that mean discount also must develop and evolve and remain relevant in this very changeable landscape. And when we talk about developments, we tend to talk about winning strategies, we talk about four main things that retail and brands, to that matter, must align behind, must seek their leadership, their investment, their resources to align behind these four winning strategies. And I just want to consider discount developments within this context or through this lens of four winning strategies. So to take Store of the Future first and look at the developments that are happening there, if we think the main sort of point that I would raise here is the amount of development happening within the discount channel around assortment and expansion of assortment. You look at those pictures on the left-hand side of a discount store now, and this is an example of Lidl. That is a very different store environment now with a much bigger assortment than you would have found 10 years ago. And Lidl will be continuing to push that assortment much further, from under 2,000 SKUs up to a core range of towards 2,500 SKUs, and pushing more into specialist ranges like organics, chilled, fresh, free-from type products. So again, opportunities opening up there for more brands, with more suppliers to become part of that assortment. But we also see missions becoming more relevant to the discount channel. As discounters open stores in different location types, then we see an opportunity for sort of convenience and impulse type missions, which creates sort of new product and pack type variant opportunities. And then the picture just in the top right there, I think kind of neatly sums up the way in which the discount store of the future is repositioning itself from, and to quote the leader price example here, low prices are not sufficient anymore. Old style discounting is dead. So really bringing together the physical store environment, enhancing that with a much broader assortment, is really helping discount sort of seek out a broader appeal. And as well, in stores of the discount store of the future, we're seeing a greater brand presence come to the fore. And I pick on Aldi Nord here. Aldi Nord is perhaps the more conservative of the two Aldi entities, but even Aldi Nord is pushing hard here in terms of creating a broader appeal, a broader destination by listing more brands. And we've got data here actually from Aldi Nord that they released this year, and showing the proportion of own brands within the core range available in each market. And the consequence is that as the percentage of own brand actually drops, then the penetration of branded goods is actually increasing. And the group overall on the right-hand side there is showing 86% now proportion of private label. Meaning that, and that's down from 93% in 2 years, meaning that brands are actually taking a much stronger position now within the discount store. And examples there from the recent leaflet campaign showing some prominent brands well featured within the weekly flyers. In terms of e-commerce and digital ecosystems, if we just think about that for a moment, I mean, the first thing to say here for the discount channel is that this is a challenge for the discount channel. E-commerce adds cost and complexity to any retail operation, and that really undermines the discount philosophy of a low-cost, simplified operation. However, we talk about the landscape changing, and discount will evolve to embrace this type of approach. It's fair to say that discounters are followers rather than leaders, but they will gradually build their capabilities, as we see in these examples here. And to take Lidl as an obvious example, it is recruiting many e-commerce specialists, many technical experts. It is building up its Lidl Digital International division, which controls e-commerce, and it already has e-commerce operations in 11 markets. Admittedly, many of those markets are around sort of travel and photo sort of retail, but in terms of online shops, it's already in 4 markets, expanding to its 5th. And that capability will continue to develop in general merchandise at the moment, but we'll talk potentially about food and beverage later. And on the right-hand side, just an example of Aldi building its e-commerce operations by partnering with Alibaba's Tmall and dipping a toe in the water in the Chinese market, listing brands for Chinese consumers, with the potential, of course, that this may at some point translate into a physical store network in the future. And further examples here of just that growing presence that we're seeing of the discount channel in terms of e-commerce. Aldi's UK wines and spirits transactional site, Penny Discount launching a website this year. Dollar General, of course, quite prominent in terms of online sales in the US. Again, mostly general merchandise, shipping, of course, not rapid fulfillment, but typically within 2 to 5 working days. And of course, Lidl with its online sites and 4 markets already, again, selling largely general merchandise items, food and beverage, not yet part of that repertoire. So for suppliers, really, it's just a watch out. It's a kind of gaining an awareness that e-commerce is going to be part of the proposition going forward, and that discount, once it builds its capability, will become a greater player in the market in the longer term. And the third area that I wanted to look at was supply chain and fulfillment, because of course part of the challenge around e-commerce is the cost of that last mile fulfillment. But here actually we see big developments, big changes taking place. And actually it's to the US that we look in terms of the way in which the discount channel is exploring new fulfillment options. So Aldi's partnership, Aldi US, its partnership with Instacart has now been rolled out to all stores in the US. Now this allows Aldi shoppers to be able to shop on the Instacart portal and actually receive deliveries to their front door, to their homes. There's clear benefit for Aldi in this type of operation in that it's low cost and low complexity for it as a business. The downside is that, of course, the interaction, the exchange is with Instacart and the shopper. So Aldi not necessarily getting that data, getting that engagement with a shopper. But at the moment, it seems to be a feasible solution that's allowing Aldi to at least compete with the likes of Walmart and Target and Kroger on their home turf. Lidl has a similar arrangement with Shipt. And in Europe, there's not as much progress as we see in the US, but there are some early examples of Lidl, for example, beginning to develop some home fulfillment, partnering with, on a very low level basis, a Buy Me app in Dublin, so operating some trials in Dublin, and Lidl in Belgium operating a sort of cycling home fulfillment service with an option on 400 products to be delivered fairly rapidly to people's homes. So early sort of trials going on in Europe, which suggests that there is far more to come. And of course, discount retail relies on scale, it relies on footfall, it relies on customer traffic, and some interesting partnerships with people like Aldi and Biedronka partnering with postal services and Amazon there to actually operate locker services, again, bringing people to those stores. So some interesting developments going on in terms of fulfillment. But of course, the discount channel is all about the supply chain. It relies on its supply chain to underpin its value ethos. It needs the lowest cost supply chain in order to offer the sort of prices and values that it does to shoppers. And herein lies a bit of a challenge for the discount channel. And I use Aldi here as an example of some of the developments at play. To lose a price position would be unthinkable for a discount operator, and particularly somebody like Aldi, who in Europe is clearly faced with intensifying competition. It's faced with increasingly competitors forging buying alliances and leveraging their scale. So Aldi, I think quite rightly, is actually looking at ways in which it can offset that competition and complexity by achieving more supply chain collaboration. And it's doing that in 2 ways, partly within itself in terms of Aldi Nord, looking at bundling A-brand promotions and A-brand buying, for example, across borders. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't Aldi Nord in Germany try and use that buying power to leverage some of its, to leverage into some of its smaller markets? But I think more significantly, It's the opportunity for Aldi Sud and Aldi Nord to combine and collaborate in a way that we've not seen before. And this is where you may get some joint purchasing, and there's talk of this within fresh produce, for example. But the example on the left-hand side shows some progress already being made, where they are already bundling volumes on private label. And on this example of toilet paper, for example, the Aldi Nord private label Solo has been discontinued, and Aldi Sud's Coquette brand will be available in all Aldi Sud and Aldi Nord stores. So I think interesting developments there, absolutely the right path to take in terms of leveraging scale in order to compete and to maintain that price advantage. And for suppliers, I think a really interesting watch out, particularly for private label suppliers, but for brands more generally, just a recognition that it's a tough market out there, and discounters are beginning to act and think differently in order to compete. And of course, the final strategy that I just want to look at in terms of developments is around shopper engagement and retention. In terms of shopper engagement, first and foremost, the discounters win loyalty every day through price and value. That is the reason for being. That is what they focus on. That underpins their whole proposition. Without price and value, then they don't have that differentiation. So price and value is absolutely vital here. But beyond that, and beyond the leaflets and the advertising that you see, the discount channel is developing some interesting activities around loyalty, such as short-term collection programs. They're developing content-led marketing programs, as we see through Aldi Inspired in Germany, and of course celebrity endorsements as well. Again, just reaching out and connecting with consumers in a way that we've perhaps not seen too much in the past. And of course, shopper engagement and retention will be increasingly data-driven and personalized in the future. And again, interesting early steps by the discount channel in this way. Lidl's personalized AI chatbot helping customers select wines, for example, and recommend wines. And then Dollar General in the US, of course, with shop and scan apps and personal and digital coupons. I think it's just a sign of things to come, and much more from the discount channel to go forward with there. And for suppliers, again, an opportunity, I think, to perhaps engage with the discount channel in ways that may not have been totally feasible not too long ago. So having looked at the developments in the discount channel, I just want to think now a little bit about how brands and suppliers might seek to engage with discounters on that agenda. And just a few examples before we come up to time here. But in terms of, again, using our structure of future store, thinking about what brands must do in order to achieve a sort of cut through in the discount environment. Now, first and foremost, on the right hand side, what brands have to deliver is something that private label cannot in the discount environment. So global strength, or something that's incredibly regionally relevant, are important criteria to be successful in the discount channel. And it's interesting, when Tesco launched their new Jack's format, discount format, the other month, there are quite a few brands listed within that format, and the brand had to outsell the private label equivalent by at least 5 times to merit a listing. So that gives a sense as to just how strong a brand needs to be in the discount channel. But also, a brand, once it's in there, once it's on shelf, it has to cut through in what I'd describe as a sea of private label. And some good examples there as to how brands are doing that on shelf. Extra free or exclusive added value product always helps. High visibility mixed cases, bold and differentiated packaging, or new product signposting are all good examples of how brands can achieve that cut through on shelf. And of course, I spoke earlier about shopper-driven missions and how that was becoming more of a part of the discount assortment. And I like this example from the beers, wines and spirits section. The discount channel, Aldi and Lidl in particular, have been keen to open up space on craft beer, for example. And in this example from Lidl, over 50% of the range of in craft beer is branded. Likewise, convenience and impulse shopper missions open up new sort of opportunities for different packs and product types and variants. Coca-Cola and Red Bull there as an example. And of course, short-term promotions are always a way in which brands, maybe not necessarily with the volume to land a core range option, can be used within a discount channel. Particularly relevant for food and beverage brands, particularly relevant as well for household brands there. You see stacked and bulk display, freestanding display units also very popular within certain discount retailers. And going beyond sort of store assortment and thinking about supply chain and fulfillment, just some examples here of how brands are using efficient solutions to really play to that requirement that discounters have to optimize in-store replenishment and shelf space. And whether it's freestanding display units like this one here from Reckitt Benckiser, a simple one-touch solution there, or whether it's mixed cases, where you've got multiple variants within one case in what is typically a health and beauty section here, where there's not a lot of shelf space. So to make the most of that shelf space and that listing, the mixed cases of those smaller SKU types are actually pretty important to actually land listings within discounters. And then of course, as well as considering mixed cases, think also about the case structure and the rate of sale and how well positioned products are within that case. So supply chain and thinking through those sort of granular details are really quite important in order to sort of win in that discount channel. E-commerce, I mentioned earlier, is not a major sort of issue currently, or brands do not get a lot of exposure because the discount channel is not necessarily playing heavily here, but it will do in the future. And I think for now, for brands and suppliers, it's about watching out as to what's happening. And brands are visible on e-commerce websites at the moment with the discount retailers, whether it's online catalogs like you see here on the left-hand side, not transactional, but just a catalog, or whether brands are being used to really give some credibility to the category, as you see on the right-hand side, or whether brands are being used to sort of communicate promotional messages, as you see on the bottom right. I think suppliers and brands just need an awareness of how their products are presented online through the discount channel, and how at some point in the future there will be a greater relevance here as the discount channel becomes more heavily focused on that particular way of selling. And finally, shopper engagement and retention. And whilst I said earlier that the future is all about data-driven and personalized insights, you can see brands really working with discounters here to reach out directly to customers in the store. And some nice examples here from Mars on the right-hand side, doing three things really in terms of creating an added value product, creating a freestanding display unit that's highly visible, but also then coordinating that with weekly leaflet advertising as well. Colgate-Palmolive on the left-hand side, already a strong on-shelf presence with some core range, but using freestanding display units to cross-sell and to bring in products that perhaps don't have the same high volume, but have perhaps stronger opportunities in terms of higher sales value and higher margin. So again, some nice examples there as to how brands across discounters are working to promote and to reach out to the customer. So I've got an eye on time, and I will be wrapping this up in the next minute or so. Just want to kind of bring it all together after having looked at the size of the opportunity, after having looked at the various discount developments that are at play through that lens of our winning strategies, and also just looking at how brands are working to align to that agenda. I'd bring it all together by just drawing your attention to this slide here. So in terms of our future store, the focus on a greater assortment as discount is broadening its appeal. As a brand, as a supplier, think about how you can cut through in that private label environment. On e-commerce and digital ecosystems, again, be aware of that growing capability and online presence that the discount channel is building. They're followers, not leaders, but they will build and scale quickly. So as a brand, have that awareness of how your product is presented. In terms of supply chain and fulfillment, a lot happening here, both in terms of home fulfillment, but also in terms of how Discounter needs to collaborate and to be able to develop a supply chain that maintains its low cost price position. And again, for brands, it's important that there are efficient solutions to optimize replenishment and shelf space. And finally, shopper engagement and retention. Price and value will, of course, always be the most significant element here, but it's interesting to see the different types of engagement activity that the discount channel is beginning to build. And for brands, there may be a way to play a part in that additional activity, but certainly right now, in store, brands have a good opportunity to reach out directly and influence that in-store shopper. So with me virtually done here, my final points would be channel strength. I said at the beginning, it's a good place, it's a good time to be thinking about discount and to be looking at discount because the channel is strong. There are some clear market opportunities. It is, of course, a changing landscape. There are many factors at play, and discount must also develop and evolve in order to stay relevant. And we see it doing that. And I hope I gave you many examples today as to how discounters are building their strategies for the future around assortment, around e-commerce, around supply chain costs and engagement. And for brands, again, I provided a few examples there as to how brands are also aligning and winning through those various strategies. So that is my presentation complete. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dialing in. There are a few things to say. I'm fairly close to time, so I won't actually take any questions now, but I will, for those that submitted questions, come back directly to you. But for those subscribers that already have access to our portal, then there is plenty more on the discount channel available. Service. We recently published our global discount report, which you can find there. We've also got recently published editions of retailer reports on Aldi and Lidl. So please, if you're a subscriber, look to those. And I think in that sense, you have my email address on the screen in front of you. If there's any further questions, please get in touch. But at just over 40 minutes, I will say thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the webinar and look out for future mailings. We will, of course, mail you with the content from this presentation in the next 24 hours. So thank you. Good afternoon.